June 26, 1977. Elvis Presley was about to walk on stage in Louisville, Kentucky, when he learned something that would change everything. A 16-year-old girl in the audience had lost her mother in a car accident just 24 hours earlier. But she came to the concert anyway because her mother had bought those tickets as a surprise. What Elvis did next had never been done before in the history of rock and roll. The Kentucky Fair and Exposition Center in Louisville buzzed with an energy that felt almost electric. It was June 26, 1977, and the summer heat hadn't stopped over 18,000 fans from packing every seat in the house. Teenagers clutched programs against their chests, middle-aged couples shared knowing smiles, and grandparents sat quietly, remembering when they first heard that voice on the radio decades ago. The air was thick with anticipation and the sweet scent of cotton candy from the concession stands. Backstage, Elvis adjusted the belt on his white jumpsuit, the one with the golden eagle spreading its wings across his chest. His hands moved with practiced ease, but there was something different about tonight, a restlessness he couldn't quite name. The band was warming up, the familiar sounds of guitars and drums creating a rhythm that had become the soundtrack of his life. Security guards whispered into their radios, everything running like clockwork, just another show in a string of performances that had taken him across the country. Kyo! The crowd's murmur grew louder as the lights dimmed. Phone cameras weren't a thing yet, but the flash of Polaroid cameras created tiny bursts of light throughout the arena like fireflies in the darkness. Mothers smoothed their daughters' hair, fathers checked their watches, and somewhere in the middle of it all, stories were unfolding that no one could have predicted. Elvis walked toward the stage entrance, his footsteps echoing in the narrow hallway. The roar from the audience hit him like a wave as the band struck the opening chords. He paused for just a moment, hand on the curtain, listening to that sound, thousands of voices united in excitement, waiting for him to step into the light. It was a sound he'd heard countless times before, but tonight it felt different. Tonight, he was about to become part of something that would change him forever. He took a deep breath, pushed through the curtain, and stepped into the spotlight. The crowd erupted, but he had no idea that among those 18,000 faces, one young girl was carrying a heartbreak so fresh it still felt like an open wound. 20 minutes before showtime, Bobby Red West, one of Elvis's longtime friends and security team members, approached him with an expression that made Elvis pause mid-conversation. Red had been with him long enough to know when something was eating at him, and right now something clearly was. "Boss, you got a minute?" Red asked, glancing around the bustling backstage area. "There's something I think you should know." Elvis set down his coffee cup and nodded, stepping away from the small crowd of band members and crew. Red lowered his voice the way he did when he was about to share something that mattered. "I was just talking to Danny Morrison. He's the local radio DJ who's been promoting tonight's show. He told me about this girl, Sarah. She's 16, and she's here tonight with her aunt." Red paused, running his hand through his hair. "Her mother died in a car accident last night. Last night, Elvis." Oh. Some drunk driver ran a red light. Elvis felt his stomach drop. He'd heard plenty of sad stories over the years, fans dealing with illness, loss, heartbreak. But something about this hit different. Maybe it was how recent it was, or maybe it was the image of a teenager trying to hold herself together at a concert the night after losing her mother. "The mother had bought these tickets 3 months ago," Red continued. "It was supposed to be a special birthday trip for Sarah. Just the two of them. When Sarah's aunt suggested they skip the show, Sarah said no. She said her mama had been so excited about tonight that she couldn't bear to waste the tickets." Elvis was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as he processed what he'd just heard. He thought about his own mother, Gladys, and how devastated he'd been when she passed. But he'd been 23 then, not 16. He'd been a grown man, not a kid who should have been worried about homework and first dates instead of funeral arrangements. "Where is she sitting?" Elvis asked quietly. "Section 12, about halfway up. Danny said she's with her aunt, but you can probably spot her. She's the one trying to smile through tears she's not ready to shed." The opening chords of C.C. Ryder filled the arena, and Elvis stepped into the spotlight with his usual swagger, but his mind was elsewhere. As he moved across the stage, his eyes weren't following the usual patterns. the front row fans reaching out their hands, the photographers crouched in the pit, or the VIP section where the local dignitary sat. Instead, his gaze kept drifting to the middle section, searching for section 12. The crowd was on their feet, screaming, dancing, completely lost in the moment, but Elvis was hunting. Between verses during the instrumental breaks, even while he was singing directly to fans in the front row, part of him was scanning faces. 18,000 people, and he was looking for one 16-year-old girl carrying a weight no teenager should have to bear. His band noticed the difference immediately. Charlie Hodge, his rhythm guitarist, caught his eye during the second song and raised an eyebrow. Elvis gave him a subtle nod that said everything was fine, but Charlie knew better. In all their years together, he'd never seen Elvis this distracted during a performance. Even the backup singers, the Sweet Inspirations, sensed something was off. Elvis's usual stage banter was shorter, more distant. It was during Love Me Tender that he finally spotted her. Section 12, about 8 rows up from the floor, sitting between an older woman who kept rubbing her shoulder and an empty seat that should have been filled by her mother. Sarah was small for 16, with long brown hair that fell around her face like a curtain. She was trying to hide behind. She was wearing a simple blue dress, the kind a mother might have picked out for a special occasion, and clutched a small purse in her lap. What broke Elvis's heart wasn't just that she was there. It was how hard she was trying to enjoy herself. Every few minutes she'd look up at the stage and attempt to smile, clapping along with the music, even swaying slightly to the rhythm. But then her face would crumble for just a moment, and she'd look down at her hands, taking deep breaths like she was fighting to hold herself together. The woman next to her, her Aunt Elvis realized, kept leaning over to whisper in her ear, probably asking if she was okay, if she wanted to leave. But Sarah would shake her head each time, straightening her shoulders with a determination that reminded Elvis of someone much older. She was here because her mother had wanted to be here, and she was going to see it through, even if it killed her. During the guitar solo, Elvis made a decision that would change everything about the night ahead. As the final notes of Love Me Tender faded into the humid Kentucky air, Elvis did something he'd never done in over 20 years of performing. He walked to the very edge of the stage, sat down on the steps, and held up his hand to quiet the crowd. The arena, which had been thundering with applause just seconds before, gradually fell into a confused silence. "Folks," Elvis said, his voice softer than usual, carrying none of his typical showman's energy, "I want to talk to you about something for a minute." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't part of the show. The band members looked at each other uncertain. Even the lighting crew seemed confused, unsure whether to keep the spotlight on Elvis or prepare for the next song. "You know, I've been doing this for a long time," Elvis continued, his eyes finding Sarah in the crowd. "I've sung for presidents and paupers, for teenagers and grandparents. But every now and then you meet someone who reminds you why music really matters." He stood up slowly, walking back to the microphone stand. "Tonight, there's a young lady in this audience who lost someone very precious to her. Someone who should be here, sitting right beside her, singing along to these songs." His voice cracked slightly. "Her mama." A collective intake of breath rippled through the arena. You could hear a pin drop. Sarah's face went pale, and she looked around nervously, probably wondering if somehow everyone knew it was her. "Now, I'm not going to embarrass this young lady by pointing her out or asking her to stand up," Elvis said, his tone gentle but firm. "But I want her to know that she's not alone tonight. Not in this room full of people who understand that music can be medicine when your heart is broken." He paused, looking directly at Sarah, though she didn't realize it was meant for her. "I lost my mama when I was 23, and I thought the world was ending. But I learned something. When we lose someone we love, the best way to honor them is to keep living, to keep finding joy, to keep singing." Elvis turned to his band and nodded. "So this next part of our show, everything from here on out, is dedicated to that brave young lady and to her mama who can't be here tonight but whose love brought her anyway." The crowd erupted in applause, but it was different this time. It wasn't the wild screaming of fans. It was the warm, supportive applause of people who had just witnessed something real, something that mattered more than entertainment. Sarah's aunt reached over and squeezed her hand, tears streaming down both their faces. And for the first time since the accident, Sarah felt something other than crushing grief. She felt seen. She felt understood. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she was going to be okay. What happened next was unlike anything Elvis had ever done in his career. Instead of launching into his usual hits, he walked over to the piano and sat down, something he rarely did during concerts. The spotlight followed him, casting a warm glow over the black grand piano that had been sitting largely unused on the side of the stage. "You know," Elvis said, his fingers finding the keys, "my mama used to tell me that every song has a story and every story has a heart. Tonight I want to share some songs that remind me of the women who shape us, who love us, who never really leave us, even when they're gone." He began to play the opening notes of Mama Like the Roses, a song he'd recorded years earlier but rarely performed live. His voice when it came was different, softer, more personal, like he was singing in someone's living room, rather than to 18,000 people. As he sang about a mother's love and the flowers she tended, you could hear the emotion in every word. Sarah sat transfixed, tears flowing freely now. Her aunt had stopped trying to comfort her and was simply letting her feel everything she needed to feel. Around them, the entire arena had become something else, not a concert venue, but a sanctuary. People were crying openly, holding each other, remembering their own mothers, their own losses. After Mama Liked the Roses, Elvis moved into He Knows Just What I Need, then Somebody Bigger Than You and I. Each song was carefully chosen, each one about love, loss, faith, and the connections that transcend death. Between songs, he shared brief stories about his own mother, how she used to hum while cooking, how she worried about him when he first started performing, how she never got to see him truly succeed. "My mama passed away 20 years ago," Elvis said, his hands still resting on the piano keys. "And I still hear her voice sometimes, especially when I'm up here. She used to say that music was God's way of helping us say things we couldn't say with just words." The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. This wasn't the Elvis they'd come to see, the hip-swiveling, charismatic performer in the white jumpsuit. This was a man, a son, someone who understood pain and had learned to transform it into something beautiful. He looked up toward Section 12, though Sarah still didn't realize he was looking at her. "Tonight, I want every person in this room to know that love doesn't end when someone dies. It just changes form. It becomes memories. It becomes the songs we sing. It becomes the way we choose to live our lives in honor of those we've lost." As Elvis finished the final notes of Amazing Grace, the arena remained in complete silence for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, one person began to applaud, then another. Soon the entire venue was filled with the kind of applause that comes from the heart, not for entertainment, but for truth, for healing, for the rare moment when a performer strips away all pretense and offers something real. Sarah felt something shift inside her chest. For the first time in 24 hours, she could breathe without feeling like she was drowning. The crushing weight of grief was still there, but it felt different now, less like a burden, and more like a bridge to her mother's memory. She found herself smiling through her tears, remembering how her mother used to sing along to Elvis records while doing dishes, how she'd always said his voice could heal anything. The rest of the concert was unlike anything else in Elvis's career. He performed his hits, Can't Help Falling in Love, Suspicious Minds, Burning Love, but they all felt different now. The entire audience had been transformed by those 30 minutes at the piano. They weren't just fans anymore. They were a community of people who had shared something sacred. After the show, as the crowd filed out into the humid Kentucky night, the conversations were different too. Instead of talking about Elvis's jumpsuit or his dance moves, people were talking about their own mothers, their own losses, their own healing. Strangers were hugging in the parking lot. Phone numbers were exchanged. Stories were shared. Sarah and her aunt were among the last to leave, neither one ready to break the spell of what they'd experienced. As they walked toward the exit, a security guard approached them, the same one who had been talking to Elvis earlier. "Excuse me," he said gently to Sarah. "Are you the young lady who lost her mother yesterday?" Sarah nodded, suddenly nervous. The guard reached into his pocket and pulled out a white silk scarf, one of Elvis's signature scarves that he usually threw to the crowd during performances. "Presley wanted you to have this," he said. He said to tell you that your mama's love is still with you and that he hopes the music helped tonight." Sarah clutched the scarf to her chest, feeling its softness against her fingers. It smelled faintly of Elvis's cologne at the stage lights, but to her it felt like a tangible piece of the healing she'd experienced. Years later, Sarah would become a grief counselor herself, helping other teenagers navigate the impossible pain of losing a parent. She'd keep that white scarf framed in her office, not as a celebrity memento, but as a reminder that sometimes when we're drowning in darkness, a stranger's kindness can throw us a lifeline back to the light. That night in Louisville became legend, but not for the reasons most Elvis concerts are remembered. It wasn't because of a particular song or a memorable outfit, or even the size of the crowd. It was remembered because, for one evening, the most famous entertainer in the world chose to be human first, celebrity second. The story spread through Kentucky like wildfire, but it was different from typical celebrity gossip. Radio DJ didn't talk about it for shock value or entertainment. They talked about it because it reminded them of something important, that fame and success mean nothing if you forget to see the people around you who are hurting. Within weeks, other performers began sharing their own stories of fans dealing with loss, of concerts that became healing experiences, of moments when entertainment transformed into something more meaningful. Elvis had inadvertently started a quiet revolution in how artists connected with their audiences, showing that vulnerability could be more powerful than any stage effect. But here's what makes this story truly timeless. It's not really about Elvis at all. It's about the choice we all face every single day to see or to look away, to acknowledge pain or to pretend it doesn't exist, to offer comfort or to stay comfortable ourselves. How many times have you been in a crowd, at work, at school, in your neighborhood, and noticed someone who seemed out of place, someone sitting alone while others celebrated, someone trying to smile through something that was clearly breaking them apart? We all have. We all have. The question is, what did we do about it? Sarah's story reminds us that we don't need a stage or a spotlight to make a difference. We don't need to be famous or wealthy or particularly gifted. We just need to be willing to see, really see, the people around us and to act on that seeing with kindness. Every day there are people in your life carrying invisible wounds. The coworker who's been quieter than usual, the neighbor who hasn't been tending their garden, the cashier who seems to be going through the motions, the student sitting alone in the cafeteria. They're all waiting for someone to notice, to acknowledge their pain, to offer a small gesture that says, "You're not invisible, you matter." Elvis saw Sarah because he chose to look beyond the spotlight, beyond his own performance, beyond the expectations of thousands of people. He saw her because he remembered what it felt like to be heartbroken and alone, and he refused to let someone else feel that way, if he could help it. The white scarf he gave her wasn't just silk and thread. It was a symbol of recognition, of dignity, of the healing power of human connection. It was proof that sometimes the smallest gestures can change everything. So the question isn't whether you have the power to make a difference. The question is, will you choose to use it? This story isn't just about one night in 1977. It's about every day since then, and every day yet to come. It's about the choice you'll make today when you see someone who needs to be seen. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted, then help us share this message. Subscribe to our channel because we believe in stories that matter more than headlines, in moments that heal more than they entertain. Give this video a thumbs up if it reminded you to look for the Sarah in your own life, the person who needs your attention, your compassion, your simple human recognition. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, share this story with your actions. Because somewhere today, someone is sitting alone in a crowd, hoping that someone like you will notice. Who will you see today?